on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs will come to order. We meet today to consider the nomination of Saule Omarova to be the controller of the currency. Congratulations to Professor Omarova for being nominated to this important role. Welcome to the committee. Welcome to your friends and families watching from home. Friends and family watching from home. I applaud the Biden administration for this historic nomination. Professor Omarova will be the first woman, the first person of color, the first immigrant to serve as the controller of the currency. She's one of the most qualified nominees ever for this job. She's widely regarded as a leading expert on banking law and policy. She holds a doctorate from the University of Wisconsin at Madison and a law degree from Northwestern. She's taught at the University of North Carolina, Senator Tillis at Chapel Hill, and at Cornell University. She served as a senior advisor to the United States Treasury under a Republican administration. She's worked at one of New York's most prestigious banking law firms. Excuse me. She's an accomplished researcher and writer and has published dozens of works on topics critical to our understanding of the financial system. More than 70 financial regulatory experts from across the political spectrum, including, of course, bankers, have endorsed her nomination. She's testified in Congress many times before many different committees. She's found common ground with senators on both sides of the aisle. I urge my colleagues to review her discussion with Senator McCain for the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations when she testified on physical commodity trading and manipulation, or watch her conversation with my friend Mike Crapo on data privacy here in the Banking and Housing Committee. These are the serious policy conversations of a thoughtful, balanced professional. Some Republican senators have decided this job should not go to the most qualified candidate. Despite her unquestioned expertise and her bipartisan record, they've worked with their powerful friends in this town to degrade this confirmation process. Just a week after news of her nomination became public, the Wall Street Journal ran an op-ed, or maybe more accurately, a hit job.
Signing Senator Lumsden.
See, the Wall Street Journal, they even talk over me when I'm trying to talk. They highlight she went to Moscow State University. They highlighted she received a scholarship named after Vladimir Lenin, neglecting to mention that pretty much everything in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in the Soviet Union was named after Lenin. Besides, there was no Milton Friedman or Ronald Reagan scholarships available. They made outlandish, unfounded claims based on where she grew up. They say she believes the Soviet economic system was superior to ours. False. They accused her of wanting to establish communism rule over banking here in the United States. False again. The Wall Street Journal neglected to mention she renounced her communist citizenship and became an American. They neglected to mention she started her family here. They neglected to mention the deep ties she has to American universities where she studied and worked. They neglected to mention her patriotic service to her chosen country at the United States Department of the Treasury under President George W. Bush. Escaping communism, moving to America for a better life, embracing American values or hard work and public service. What could be more American than that? Only a few days after the op-ed was published, the ranking member piled on. He requested that Professor Omarova supply the committee with a paper that she had to write as an undergraduate. To be clear, this committee never requires anyone to submit unpublished undergraduate work as part of the nominations process. I don't remember any nominee who faced a similar request, nor do I think that what college kids write is generally a good guide for their policy views 3 decades later. So staff sitting behind me in both parties can breathe easy. If you aspire to a presidential nomination, you won't need to turn in your sophomore book reports on the Scarlet Letter. Not only did the ranking member request the paper, he put out a press release to tell the world that he was requesting this paper. He went out of his way to mention the same Lenin scholarship that the Wall Street Journal did. He liberally sprinkled the words Marx, Lenin, Moscow, Russian throughout, a total of 12 times, a dozen instances of guilt by association. And then he sent another press release. Since then, he and other Republican senators have taken to the floor to repeat these vile attacks that suggest this nominee doesn't share our American values. They have a formula. Start with a passing and inaccurate reference to her academic work. Distort the substance beyond recognition. Mix in words, Marx, Lenin, communism. End with insinuations about Professor Omarova's loyalties to her chosen country. That's how Republicans turn a qualified woman into a Marxist bogeyman. We know that some people in Washington have been calling their political opponents socialists and communists for years. I'll let Professor Omarova tell her own story, but I'd venture to guess that those words ring a little differently to those who've experienced communist oppression firsthand. We know that a shadowy political group funded by former Trump staff has been fomenting these personal attacks and pushing radical right-wing news sites to spread misinformation. These inflammatory insinuations continue to stoke the unhinged rhetoric that has poisoned our politics. Now we know what happens when Trumpism meets McCarthyism. It's a cruelty no person should experience. Professor Omarova and her family suffered generations of oppression under a communist dictatorship. She worked hard. She went to the best school she could in the United States. She became an American citizen. She started a family. She spent her career to give more Americans the opportunities that she was denied behind the Iron Curtain. That hard work got her where she is today. Just think about that. A Kazaki kid growing up in Soviet Central Asia. 30 years later, she sits before the Senate as the president's nominee for controller of the currency. Imagine that. She embodies everything we should celebrate: the fighting spirit that makes this nation great, the tenacity to strive for a better life, the openness and the opportunity of America that attracts the best minds from all over the world, from every kind of background. From growing up in the Soviet Union to escaping to build a new life here, to her enduring this last month of personal attacks with the dignity that she possesses, Professor Omarova has demonstrated the strength and independence she'll need to be a fair, impartial, and tough controller of the currency. She has both the private industry and the public policy experience to prevent a repeat of the financial crisis, a crisis that cost millions of Americans their homes and jobs and shuttered hundreds of community banks for whom she has fought. The Leadership Conference on Human and Civil Rights, the Center for Responsible Lending, the National Urban League, Unidos US, National Fair Housing Alliance, the National Community Investment Coalition. All these organizations have written a letter demanding a stop to these despicable attacks from their organizations on this nominee. I've worked with all of you in this committee, Republicans and Democrats alike, the new members and the more veteran members. I'd hope you'd all have a sense of decency today and moving forward. I expect my colleagues to treat Professor Omarova with the dignity and the respect she deserves. I ask you to listen, to really listen. Listen to her words as she shares her story. She shares her views about how she'll do this job. She shares with us how she wants to serve her fellow Americans.